Hello everyone, how are you doing? It's me, Ross, and I'm here for a GM chat and Patreon Q&A. We're going to go through some of our Q&A stuff. I just had our technical person run in here and try to tell me something, and I didn't catch any of that, so I hope you can actually hear me or see me or something, or maybe my tech person will send me a text message and let me know what's going on right now. Hopefully everything is going well. As I'm not hearing anything, I'm going to assume it is. So, yeah, excellent. Welcome to the GM chat and Patreon Q&A. I got a thumbs up now, so I think everything is working. That's always a weird thing to have at the last second, but that's kind of how my week's been. But I want to talk about a topic before I launch into any of the other stuff, and before we get to some of these Q&As that I have not read ahead of time. So this should be entertaining. I usually like to pick a GM topic. Oh, wait, before I get started, check out the banner. If you missed the live stream, we got a banner now. It looks great. Aaron did the graphic design for it and got it printed, super cheap. It was fantastic. So I'm excited to have that out at cons and whatnot very, very soon. And of course, using it as my backdrop. It's handy. I was going to green screen, but I think this works out pretty good. And plus, I got this weird table, so it's difficult. But I digress. So the GM topic I wanted to talk about tonight is sort of a meta topic. I wanted to talk about the GM as a character. So I spent a lot of time talking about GM tips and tactics and ways to handle certain situations and that kind of thing. But I wanted to kind of get a little meta and reference the GM as a character that you're playing at the table. It stuck out to me after the last live stream we just did, where I get to play with Eileen, and I really like GMing for Eileen because she is, in a very fun way, she is very confrontational when we play, and I like that dynamic some, not to the extent where it's bothersome or problematic or you get into rules lawyering or something like that, but somebody who kind of finds a competitive nature with the GM. I enjoy that. So I play a specific kind of character when I'm GMing. It kind of goes back to what I was talking about, I think, a few chats ago, where you're trying to be the obstacle as well as the cheerleader. So it's sort of leaning into those roles where you're almost playing up situations where even if you kind of knew what was going to happen, you still sort of play like you don't. And what you're really doing is to leaning into your players' play styles. It tends to engage them a little bit more when you can do that directly. So this streaming season we're doing right now is a great example because I think Eileen's really the only one that's like that. Maybe Joshu just a little bit, but he still likes the flashier stuff. So having different kind of play styles, at least the way they approach the GM, whereas as opposed to like confrontational versus cooperative. It's a lot of fun for me, and it's something I noticed that I do a lot more because I play with a lot more people than I used to. I used to play with just like the same, 10 people, give or take, and now I've certainly expanded my player base like way out. So it's been really cool to kind of help myself GM for a bunch of new people by trying to like figure out what their like play habits and play styles are, and then trying to give them that and play to those expectations practically. It's really cool. It's certainly not easy to do, especially if you're maybe new to GMing, or maybe it's like a one shot and you haven't got to do any prep or anything like that. Like it can be daunting, but it can also really save you in situations where you're stuck. So yeah, I know that might sound weird. I mean, let me know in the chat if that's a weird thing to present, but I certainly play the GM as a character in the same way I play an NPC. I might be alone on that now that I'm talking, but either way, it's something I've been thinking about a lot this week. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit, and maybe you haven't ever noticed you've done it before, but maybe think about it this time when you're playing. Just, are you presenting the GM in a way that the players are engaging with more than maybe who you are actually? It's similar to just, playing a role, basically. It's like playing an NPC. There was just a little beepy thing in my ear, so I think we got like a new follower or something. I might not have had those on. I do appreciate that, whatever that was. Thank you so much. I will look at the log. Oh wait, I can do this. Yes, I think that's Shrike7. Thank you, Shrike7, for the follow. We really appreciate it. Welcome to the channel if this is your first time. Excellent. So I wanted to talk about a few more things before we launched into the Q&A portion. I'm kind of like a private person, and I think this is a good chance to maybe talk directly with a lot of people. So, I'm just kind of make an effort to talk more about like my week and that kind of stuff. Just maybe be a bit more personal with everyone. It's not a strength of mine, so please forgive me as I stumble through a bunch of stuff. But apparently people want to know like what my week was like and that kind of stuff. So I'm going to talk about it a little bit. Day job week was real rough. So doing the show and stuff like that, it's very much a split life. Much to the chagrin of like my friends and family, where I in effect have two jobs. One of them is like the day job, and I'm fortunate to have one that is that good, and I can provide like insurance and that kind of stuff. So it's like super important to have. And then this, which is a lot of passion, and gosh, it's great to like play with people and be able to make and like publish stories out of the games, and maybe give something back to the community that's helped me so much through my entire life. So, yeah, it's real rough when it gets rough in the day job, because obviously that time's got to come from somewhere. I tend to not really get through as much stuff for the show as I wanted to do that week. And then right now, like Victoria and I have a lot of like big plans like in the works. So there's a lot of like background stuff that we're probably not going to see the fruits for a little bit. Although we've recorded some episodes and we've got some stuff out for the other thing. God, I got to be really vague right now. So we've had some exciting traction there, but yeah, it's been a daunting last couple of weeks. There's been some like family medical stuff, but all of that is hopefully going to be like pretty good. So yeah, that's pretty much how my week's been. I've got to play some cool games. I got to play Modern Age with Victoria and Aaron, who you'll know from the show, and then a whole bunch of other people, which was fantastic. That's a really cool game. I like a lot of systems, but I like modern stuff. I like urban fantasy, so it's a fun game. I hadn't got to see that system before. It's really cool, so I enjoyed that. Let me know what you've been playing too in chat. I'd like to know what everybody else has been experimenting with and getting to the table. Forgive me if I'm just a little tired, as I had stated. It's been kind of a long week, well, long like 10 days. But anyway, lots of like planning stuff. We've got the adversary cards. Those will hopefully be out in the next day or two. They should have already been out, but again, this is what I mean by just not running out of time. And got to be better about getting to sleep and that kind of stuff. So, but that'll hopefully be out in the next couple days. The art's fantastic. I'm super excited. We're gonna keep cranking those out. I wanted to change the format of this monthly chat that we try to have. I like building up like questions and the Q&A and everything, and being able to talk about those and answer questions that you might have, whether live now on Twitch or whether you're watching this on YouTube later. But I also I like having a conversation about this kind of stuff usually, especially as the questions maybe get a little deeper. So I want to figure out a way to maybe have you guys call in. Maybe it's not necessarily on camera or something like that, but I don't know if you're interested in that. I think we wanted to have some guest folks on, so I think we'll certainly have some people from the show on and that kind of stuff. But I wanted to start doing these maybe a little more frequently, because I think it's important to kind of connect with everybody, maybe a little more than once a month, and yeah, get a chance to have a conversation about some of this stuff as opposed to just a Q&A. It's sort of inspired by doing con panels and that kind of thing, but there can be a bit of a back and forth there that some people just don't get a chance to attend these live and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think I want to try that. So maybe next time we do these, maybe starting next month, we'll start doing them every week, and then maybe have a friend of the show come on and talk about something, or maybe hopefully talk to some of you. We'll keep it to patrons, obviously, but we certainly have the technology to be able to do that. I'm figuring it out now thanks to the live stream stuff. So yeah, that's going great. So let me know if that's a crazy idea. Just let me know in the chat or in the Discord what you think. I would really like to, I think, talk to some of you, and we could do Zoom or Google or something like that. I can pump the audio in here pretty well. It shouldn't really be a problem. So yeah, let me know what you think about that. Yeah, otherwise, I think we'll get to some Q&A stuff, probably. Yeah, let's do some Q&A. I think that's enough of me rambling for a while. All right, so where we last left off in our little Q&A adventure. Okay. I sort of highlighted this by tagging where I was tagged, but I had a little mini conversation with myself here about making sure to get the streaming show up on YouTube, which I've been doing very well. So the 3rd episode is up now. I got to get the podcast stuff cut still, so that'll be coming out very, very, very soon. Almost done with the 2nd episode. I'll get the 3rd one out shortly after that. I think what we're going to do, I think we're going to probably finish up Act 1 the next stream, then we might take a week off, but we'll see where that goes. We've also got the Patreon producer game coming up on Friday. We're going to play some D&D and do something fun, so we'll have some time for that kind of stuff too. Maybe we'll start looking at streaming those or something, depending on how everybody thinks. I don't want to force somebody in the producer tier to stream themselves, but we did it to Brendan. He seems to be doing all right. He seems to like it, so maybe we'll do it to everybody. It'll be fun. All right, so, oh yes, and then a whole bunch of people came to my defense when I was yelling at myself, I was just really using it as a reminder, so thank you all very much. That's very nice of you. I appreciate that. All right, Dave even came in. Everybody was going for it. All right, and Clem here's got our first question. So, are there times when your motivation to run a campaign drops? What causes it? What do you do to avoid it before it happens, or heal when it happens? By the way, I like your new avatar. Thank you so much. AkiDead on Twitter did this little cartoon avatar. I love it. That was not in the room. Dang it, I thought I had it in the room. I've got this shirt that's in this avatar. I'm so excited. I'm thrilled about it. It came out great. But back to your question. So, are there times when your motivation to run a campaign drops? Yeah, definitely. I mean, that happens to everybody. I think there's a distinction here between when my motivation to run drops as opposed to my motivation to run a specific campaign. So, I mean, sometimes you just get tired. You get beat up all week at work, and you just don't have it in you to be creative and scheduling master and, making sure people are fed and happy and nobody's car gets broken into, all that kind of stuff. So, there's a lot that goes into GMing. So I think that probably would wane before motivation to run a campaign. A campaign, if my motivation to run it is dropping, it's because my motivation to GM is dropped. Like, I don't think I've ever been in a situation where a campaign couldn't be turned around in an instant. And that's not to say like it's not ridiculous, but like, okay, so you take the left path instead of the right, and we just change the story from here completely. 180. We can retcon stuff. We can do what, like, you can always kind of spin that around. I don't think it would ever be the campaign that I wasn't interested in. If it's a problematic player or something like that, like I do pretty frequent resets. So every few games I tend to be checking in. How's everybody doing? What are we thinking? Are your characters progressing the way you want? Are you happy with the story? What could be better? That kind of stuff. Just get some feedback from your players. Reinforce that social contract that you have going. Yeah, so I think that answer might be no. For a specific campaign. Running in general, yes, 100% my motivation for that will drop, and that's just a little weird, and that kind of stuff. So I've got my own issues, and those will cause motivation to drop just across the board. So yeah, that happens. What causes it? A lot of things. Burnout is probably the biggest one, where you've just run too much. Like I was mentioning earlier, there's a lot of other stuff that goes into GMing, especially for like a live group. I find it's a little easier when you work remotely and you've got a scheduler and that kind of stuff, but there's a lot of energy that goes into running a game more than just actually running it, usually. Not every group works like that, but most of them do, I think. That can cause it. For me, if you got some issues here and there every now and then, and your motivation just drops clear across the board, that happens. That's unrelated realistically, but it still occurs. If I find myself telling a story or caught in a rut or repeating myself too much, that kind of stuff, that when I start to feel like I'm not really being original, and this is just like the story I just told like 8 months ago, except I've just changed a few characters, and when I don't even notice I'm doing it, that's even worse. So that'll kind of just, that's more of like making me doubt my abilities as a GM and that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think those are probably the big ones. I also I get hangry, and I need to consume food, and I like the point for me being hungry to kind of raging hangry is only 30 minutes. So if I don't catch that before the game, that can cause my motivation to drop mid-session. But then usually I can just eat some junk food and I'm, well, back up to full energy. Definitely not healthy, but yeah. So what do you do to avoid it before it happens, or heal it when it does happen? So to avoid it before it happens, you just got to pace yourself. Oh man, everything about my game is about pace. So if you notice, I was just talking about when we were going to take a week off on an act break. I am a big proponent of that. If you try to meet weekly with your group, I would recommend taking every 4th or 5th week off, just generally. Just because that'll build some anticipation. If you can find natural kind of beats or act breaks to give them some space, the conversation about the game's going to continue. So usually everything will stay fresh. If you end it in a good spot, you won't lose your place. That when you're editing the show, that doesn't really happen, but in a general table sense. So taking a week off is a huge, and plus your family probably wants to see you or your friends that aren't gaming with you. So yeah, take a week off. That's a huge way to avoid it. Play, that's another great one. So if you have a game where you're playing in, so if you are the type that has the time or completely insane and are in multiple games all at once, some of which are running, I like having when I'm running, I like having a game I'm also just playing in. It gives me a chance to relax and enjoy the tabletop experience. That's super important. That'll help me before anything crazy happens. How do you heal it when it does happen? Same thing, realistically, you need to take that week off. That's a huge week. Play a one-shot So the next week, if you can't take the week off, play a ridiculous one shot, something completely opposite from what you're doing. Like give yourself a complete like mental reset on that. That works for me too. Ideally though, in that instance, like, hey, does anybody else want to run a one shot? So you get a chance to play a one shot, and you're still getting the week off relaxed too. So you're getting like a double dose of the recharge. That one works really well. Yeah, that was a great question. Lots of people enjoyed that question. So yes, that was really good. I hope that was informative. That was indeed a great question. If any of you got any great tips, yeah, please let us know. And this happens to everybody. And it's not just a GM thing too. Players burn out. You burn out from everything. All things in moderation. That's sort of a key thing to live your life by, in a very broad and general sense. So yeah, moderate yourself, pace yourself. It's good. All right, moving on. So Victoria and I are doing Table Talk with Victoria and Ross. It's going to be this great new show. We've already recorded some of it. It's fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. So I know we got some of these into that email, but just in case there are some in here, I want to talk about it. So, all right. So how would you go about using a darker subject matter, surreal horror, murder thrillers, 80s gory slasher with a more lighthearted party who has shown interest in these darker tones? And how would you attempt to prepare them? Ooh, that's a good question. So I actually like running games like this, specifically Dread. I do, in fact, I'm probably going to have one next month. Every Halloween I like to do like an 80s, 90s slasher movie game set at like a summer camp. It's fantastic. That is a great way to do it. Now, if you have a lighthearted party who has shown interest in the darker tones, like, you want to be really careful not to go overboard. So a little bit of interest means like they just want it cranked up like 1 to 2 notches. So I have a feeling just by how many genres you listed, you want to go like full ham on this. I would suggest not doing that. I would suggest working it in a little bit. This is actually one of the reasons I really like Dread for doing like horror and slasher games, because the tension comes from the block tower, not so much the actual session. So you've got such a helper in doing all of the horror stuff, and then you've got sort of like friendliness of wooden block stacking game. So players kind of approach it lightheartedly, but still kind of dig deep into the horror side of it. So yeah, how would you attempt to prepare them? Gosh, Dread, again, I'm just going to pimp Dread for a second. Dread is great for this. So you give the players a questionnaire. It's weirdly like a social contract too. It's pretty cool. So that's really the big one. You have a really important session 0, and you line up that social contract, because you need to be really kind of clear from the get-go what the interest in the darker tones is, and make sure you kind of really focus on that, and then maybe not bring anything else into it to start with. Kind of see how that sits before you start weaving in some of the other stuff. At least that's what I would do. That's, take that or leave it. All right, that was a good question. I like that. Again, Dread is great. Definitely a one-shot. So you do a one-shot in the darker tone and see how it sits. Excellent. All right, moving on. Any tips for a not safe for work game? So, gosh, I don't know. That's, I mean, social contract, obviously, that's another like super important one there. If you're going to run some stuff with some like maybe like hypersexualized themes, or I don't know what you want to explore there. But yeah, in the very similar way to the like Dread and to the like a group that's showing interest in horror, I would prepare probably exactly the same way, which probably says a lot about me. But I would approach preparing for a group that has showed interest in a horror game exactly the same way as I would approach a group who has shown interest in like a really not safe for work game. So yeah, make sure that contract is lined up dead on from the start. That will be key. And like just, really respect the players in that one. Like, make sure your X card is active. Make sure anyone can break that scene if they need to, because those areas are real slippery. So yeah, just be ready for that. That's probably my bit of advice for that. Um, would you ever consider doing a steampunk Genesis game? Absolutely, I would. I think I'm on record several places. I am very keen on basically any punk theme. I love all of them. Genesis is a great game. It's everything I like about Star Wars plus everything I like about a generic. So I really enjoyed playing it for the Harry Potter season. So yeah, I definitely would consider that. All right. Okay, so this was some questions about the emails. So thank you all for sending some in to the show. Can't really say much yet, but I definitely know some of them are going to be on it. So yay, that's going to be fun. There's some really fun questions, and there's some kind of heavy questions too. So we made sure we put up front that our advice is probably questionable. So, but we're giving it a go. All right. And everybody's talking about The Hiding Way, which you should be too. They're awesome. Check out their stuff. They've got an actual play and a really good Star Wars show. No, it's a little broader than that, but get some good general role-playing stuff in there too. All right. Okay, now we're clearing up some stuff about how the Q&A channel works, which is great. Isabella, thank you so much, Iz, for being all over that. All right. So, Stormshot here. What system setting have you wanted to run but haven't been able to either personally or for the podcast? Oh, jeez. There's a ton. There's so many. So, time being the primary limiting factor there. There's just not enough hours in the day to run all the games I want to run. So the biggest one would be like Shadowrun. I love Shadowrun. I do not like the system. I've never run it. Like I haven't run any of the new editions. I was really hoping like Anarchy was going to do something, maybe make some waves or maybe make the game more accessible. But I think the mechanics are a little limiting towards its accessibility. So I love that game. I've got to play the newest edition I think once. I loved it, but yeah, I haven't been able to run that personally or for the podcast. Yeah, that's a big one. A lot of the little one shots that I've played, I'd really like to do those. I'd really like to get a chance to do more of the one shot styles. We'd sort of lined up Not Another Tavern for that, but production time being what it is, we don't get to do a lot of that. So I've got Paranoia back there. I still haven't played that. I've had that book for probably 6 months at this point. That would be so much fun. I have one of the show's good friends, Ryan, who played Simon Tiller. He absolutely hates that game. It would be really entertaining to watch him play it, but so there's one for both personally and for the show. I haven't been able to do. I've not been able to get Ryan to enjoy Paranoia, and bless him, he tries, but yeah, it's just not for him. All right. Oh, geez, that's a really good question. All right, so Isabella says you chose three songs. Well, you chose our three main character songs when the season started out. Now that they've gone through that full character arc, what songs would you choose for them now? So what is talking about here is my audio mood board. So I set these up before every game I'm going to run, where I get some audio themes going, sort of set piece themes, character themes, NPC themes, villain themes, that kind of stuff. I kind of put together a little playlist and I listen to that when I prep. And specifically what I do once the characters are made is the final step of my audio mood board is to go and pick a song that I think represents the character for me, and then I have the players send me one that they think represents their character. So if you do listen to any of the playlists on Spotify, which I think they're all published and public, you'll I think it's pretty obvious which is which. It's great though. It's a lot of fun. So now that's a really good question. I feel like I should have Spotify up for this too, because I need to remember exactly what song. So I did for the Fantastic Beasts season. I did a group song, which was "Cheap Magic" by Turbo Wolf, which turned out to be pretty foreshadowing, which was very nice. But I'm trying to recall exactly which songs were the character songs. So let me look at this list here. All right. So I picked Broomstick by L7, which is one of my favorite punk bands of all time. They actually just put out some new stuff, which is very, very good. So I picked that for Marceline. And yeah, that didn't work out the way I thought it was going to at all. What song I would choose for her now? Gosh, I would need to like listen to a bunch of songs. Because the character did, I was expecting a much more like kind of in your face, a little more punk rock. And I think she was definitely more reserved and in touch with her own instinct, her own identity, her own feelings, that kind of stuff, which was really cool. I was expecting like a bit more of an explosive character from her. So realistically, I can't answer this question. Is I can't go through and pick out new songs right now. I would need to like actually listen to a bunch of music and figure that out. It is a great question. What I'll do instead, I will come back and answer that one later. And I love this idea, so I think I'm actually going to start doing that from now on. But I picked a song. What I'll do is I'm just going to talk through the songs I picked for the characters, and then I'll follow up with what I've changed it to and why I picked them. The song I picked for Renilda was Play My Darling Play by Katzenjammer, which is another one of my favorite bands. It's what happens. My playlists are usually mostly my favorite bands that have a song that I like that reminds me of the character or something like that. And what's funny is his characters tend to always get Katzenjammer songs, which probably says a lot about what I think about her in general, which is great because they're an awesome band. If you haven't listened to them, they're amazing. But this song, it's sort of about a character who is leaving the comforts of the usual to explore a larger world. It's very on the nose for that character. It's someone who's never done like field work or anything like that. So this whole song kind of in a very lighthearted and whimsical kind of way kind of pokes fun at what you would need to make that person leave their home to go experience the greater world. So yeah, I used that one, and that one was pretty accurate. I was pretty happy with that one. And then, yes, and then Reed was a song called Hands Up by the Funk Hunters, which is like an electro funk band, which I really like. And this one didn't really work out so well for me either. I sort of felt that like I felt that Reed's like Hogwarty-ness would kind of come out a lot more, and he would be very much more like vocal about everything. But Reed was again like kind of an introspective character, which was amazing. So I kind of I figured between Marceline and Reed, one of them was going to be the more outwardly facing character, the head, the hand, or the heart. But that really didn't play out at all. But that's still a great song, and it still sort of represented the group, so I liked it. And yeah, I picked that because I figured he would be kind of stomping around, loud and letting people know what's going on. And sorry about those computer noises. But yeah, so I was like 1 for 3 this season. I usually do a little better than that, but in retrospect, I was usually doing like season 6, so I'd already been around the characters for a few seasons. But I would definitely, since Isabella asked this question, I don't think I would change your character song. I think that one stays. The other two I would have to change. All right, moving on. So Fungo was watching Firefly and Serenity, and was curious if there was a Genesis hack for it, or if there was a Firefly somebody doing that, the Firefly RPG. There is one. I think we're probably getting to that in this. But I think there was specifically a Firefly RPG, if I'm not mistaken. I never played it, but Genesis would be great for it. Fate, I think, is also mentioned. Fate would be great for it. Any of your generics could pretty much handle that one pretty well. Um, I, I have a soft spot in my heart for GURPS because that was the generic I kind of grew up with. So, yeah, but it would work for that too. How do you like the gun battles in Star Wars and Genesis? So, wow, logo comes from some crunchy systems. And yes, it's cool if you post podcasts for references. So, how do I like the gun battles? I like the gun battles in Star Wars and in Genesis. I find the combat, it takes a little bit and it can be a little swingy at the higher levels, but I think you can get most of it done in 3 rounds when you apply, the adversary dynamic correctly, which I really like. That being said, it is really hard to kill people in these games, kill players specifically, which you kind of have to build for that if you want to really do it. Or they have to kind of be silly about it, kind of help you kill, Not that there aren't characters that won't do that, but so I love the mechanics of it. I maybe might make, you can always house rule this kind of stuff too. Just everyone has plus 50 to every roll or something like that. But maybe, up the lethality of it a little bit. If anything, that's my one complaint. I think the mechanics work great. I finally got a chance to go through the FAQ where they sort of clarified a few things and, fixed a few things. So I think the mechanics are pretty tight and good. I enjoy them. So yeah, that's that. All right. And people are having a conversation about that. All right. So yeah, more of a conversation about the gun battle, which is great. If you haven't read it, it's really good stuff. You should hop in there, but I'm not just going to just read that. That would be kind of boring, I think. All right, so questions for GMs. If you have a limited time to game and then infrequently, would you say a series of one-shots would work better for an overarching campaign? Yeah, and then and personally, they would lean towards one-shots. The problem they have is running into pacing. You try to keep it within a certain time frame, the tendency to rush and railroad. Okay. If I find to try to cram too much in, we never get to it. Does anyone have any suggestions on how to find the balance between volume and efficiency? Wow, this is a good question, and a really, really tough one. Yeah, so if it's limited time and infrequent, I would tend to agree that one-shots work better. That being said, I would want them to be like comic books. So it would be a series of one-shots, which I think is probably what you're getting at. But yeah, I would pace it like a comic book, if that makes sense. So if you try to keep it within a certain time frame, there's a tendency to rush and railroad your players. All right. So try to cram too much in and never gets to it. All right, and that's the key right there. That sentence. If you try to cram too much in it, you'll never get to it. I think this is a case, and this is something that's taken me a long time to kind of learn and figure out and get good at, I guess, is when you estimate that time frame. There's a tendency, especially on the GM side, to kind of think everything's going to take less time than it's going to. And by less time, I mean like a lot less time. For instance, I was about to say spoilers, but I forgot, we live streamed it. There was a scene in the newest episode of the live stream season where they were walking down a hallway. I gave them the simple choice to walk the other way or try to take the shortcut with all the do not enter signs and blah, blah, blah. And they took the do not enter sign, and it turned into like a 30-minute scene. So what was going to be a 5-second wipe turned into a 30-minute scene. You need to factor those in every time you play it. No one, so the fear here is that you're not going to have enough for the session, and I cannot tell you how good hearing, oh, what do you mean it's over? Like, that is an amazing thing. You always want to leave them wanting more. It's like an old showbiz thing. You would rather be short than long. If your one shot only takes an hour, that's not bad. That's good. That's a really good thing because they're going to want more game. They're going to be ready for the next one. You're going to engage them more. So like the pacing is definitely the key, but I still think you're maybe trying to pace too much in it. I think when I'm doing a one shot, I'm planning for a 2-hour game. I'm planning on 4 or 5 scenes. I think that's it. I got a 3-act structure in 5 scenes. That's my going rate for a one shot. It seems like nothing. It seems like it should take a half an hour to do, and that's about the right place you need to be at. Because what you think could take a half an hour to do could likely take 2.5 hours. And you need to make sure you've got that end room. I've never said this game is going to take a half hour to run and had it take a half hour. I've never been under that. Like it's always 45 minutes, maybe. An hour, sure. But yeah. So I think you need to scale it back a little bit more. I think you're right on with your idea. That's how you want to do it, one-shots, series, comic book style. But think about it like a comic book is not long at all, unless you're buying the novel, So yeah, pace it back a little bit, I think. I think that would help. And then a whole bunch of other people get into this conversation. I love that there's a conversation happening about this. This is great. So I don't want to bog everybody down reading all that, but a lot of people sharing their opinions, which I hope are different than mine. So go into the Q&A and read it, because you should definitely, if the one piece of advice I could ever give you on GMing is don't listen to one person's advice on GMing. Listen to a lot of people's advice on GMing, because everybody's got good stuff, including you. So keep at it. You're great. Awesome. So moving on. Oh wait, now questions aren't even going to me. Now people are just asking Mark questions. Mark is great. He did a lot of the art for the show. He did some stuff for the Harry Potter. He did the double art adversary card. That was him. He's awesome. So now people are just talking to him, which happens. Oh, and then Isabella cracks the whip a little bit. Awesome. Look, Isabella, you're great. All right. Brendan was asking questions. Shadowrun season, pros, cons. Wow. Nobody's going to believe me that I don't read these ahead of time now. Thanks, Brendan. As I was just talking about Shadowrun, I will try to speak to this without just repeating what I said earlier. Shadowrun season, I would love to do a Shadowrun season. Pros, cons. All right. So this is, the GM chat. This is, real time with Ross, as it were. So real talk, we got pegged as a Star Wars show pretty early. And, I know we got Not Another Tavern. We got a couple other places we can do it. But, it took some people some time to come around to Fantastic Beast. And there's some people that just aren't into it. And we've done so many Star Wars seasons now that at this point I think people kind of expect it. And, that wasn't necessarily my plan to begin with, but I appreciate it. We certainly like that people want us to keep telling those stories, and we're going to keep doing it. But so that's the big con right there. We're talking about a game with realistically like a 10% market share, maybe. It might be a little higher, a little lower than that. But, Shadowrun's definitely lower than that. I think anyways, nobody really knows, but, when you're looking at like the D&D Pathfinder, I mean, those are 50% of the market, like those are massive audiences. So for the show, it's got a lower appeal, and we're indie still. Like I'm doing this in my free time still. Thanks to our patrons, we've got some income coming in, and we can, take some swings at some stuff, and we're going to keep doing it. But it's tough to swing at something that's going to have a lower kind of audience point to start from. Just because I don't have all the time and energy I need to connect with everybody, to bring them into the show. So those are huge cons. Another huge con is the mechanics. I love the setting. I absolutely love the setting. The first thing I thought about in Genesis was like Bright and that kind of stuff. Like but it's a tough system. It really is. I'd have to learn it like well enough to be able to produce it for a show. And I know we're not like necessarily super rules heavy, but there's still a lot to it. There's this part of me where I want to represent that a GM makes mistakes in the gameplay, but I also want to represent the game pretty well. That's just because I respect the people that developed it, basically. I know what can go into making a game, and I want to do it right for the people who spent their time and energy making it. So it's not an easy learn either. So that's probably the three big cons. The pros, the setting is amazing. Oh, the setting is so good. It's everything I like about fantasy, everything I like about like modern sci-fi, near future sci-fi. It's got that punk edge. I also like that it's the earlier iterations of like cyberpunk, like especially a lot of the books that I loved like in high school, like Neuromancer and Snow Crash and all those Diamond Age, all those great, but like those kind of they're dystopian, they're bleak. So I like that there's kind of just an element of humor and color and that kind of stuff, especially with more the modern takes of, more the modern editions of Shadowrun. So I like that there's a little more whimsy sprinkled in. Like I like my punk with a little side of whimsy. That's fine. So yeah, that's a huge pro. Oh, I'm gonna add one more con. Like I love playing that game. I love playing that game. So that would be a big con for me running it. I'd love somebody else to run that so I can play. Because oh my gosh, do I love playing hackers? It's so much fun. I should say deckers, so I am using the right, chummer lingo, biz, whatnot. Um, Other pros, would have a lot of fun doing like full-scale production for that. So really cranking up the audio drama on that with like some cool music. Like there's a lot of great like small indie electronic bands right now that maybe we could talk to. Some like nerdcore rappers that I would love to get involved. Yeah, there'd be a lot of cool sound effects and soundscapes to work with there. Plus, it's just like all attitude and edge, and the idea of doing that clean is kind of funny too. Like, so right away, I think like we use beeps. So maybe we swear and talk, kind of gruff, and then use beeping just so we keep it clean still, which I've always found usually like 9 times out of 10 funnier than the actual non-beeped. But yeah, that's some pros and cons. Yeah. I could go on more. Gosh, I love that system. All right, Isabella, what system would you like to use on an upcoming season? Oh, there's so many I would love to use on a full season. Assuming I can't use one that we've done before. I mean, we haven't done a dungeon. It's not a big secret to everyone that we've got that in the works. But D&D is really great right now. It is. There's a lot of good stuff happening there. So that's definitely one I'd like to have on upcoming seasons. We've got to participate in some really cool events, and I would certainly like to keep doing that. So, yeah. Other ones, I think Paranoia would be so much fun. I would just love to run a game of Paranoia for the show, for sure. And a full season might be a bit much. Maybe 6 episodes, maybe somewhere in there. I'd also like to run like some new games. So if somebody's got like a game hitting Kickstarter and they want somebody to pace it through, what is it? Burn Bright. I think that's the name of it. I hope I'm not messing that up. It's the new game developed for Roll20. It's also like you can play it without Roll20, but it's got Roll20 in mind, and some of their people have worked on it. It's actually a bunch of cool people that worked on that. Kat Cool from Campaign, like she's one of the designers of it, if I'm not mistaken, or writer. So yeah, that one would be great. I'd love to play that. That would be super fun for the show. And that's sort of a like urban fantasy. It's got that kind of Shadowrun vibe, but it's maybe a little more fun, a little more funny. Yeah, lends itself a little more to comedy, maybe. I don't know. I haven't got a chance to really dive into it, but yeah, I've been reading a lot of Eberron lately. So yeah. Anyways, so any thoughts yet on streaming versus traditional recording? Oh, this is Brendan, the executive producer. Current season, both pros and cons. Has it created more challenges than you not think of, both in-game and post-production? So there's lots of pros and cons to the streaming stuff so far. It's way different from the traditional recording, and by traditional recording, we mean like the Dice for Brains recording, in that there's certain things I don't say on the stream that I would say at the table. And we've had some technical issues on the first, and we knew that was going to happen. It's not a huge deal, but that's been like the biggest con, I think, have been some of the technical hurdles we've had to overcome. But I think we're getting there. And also, like, knowing that it's live and that I'm not going to cut myself out, I don't pull as many tricks. So, and I'm just kind of noticing that on the third episode, that I'm stuff that I would cut because I'm playing a trick basically. I'm engaging with the player in a way that I don't intend to air, even though it's really effective. I don't do those. So like, really digging into Eileen to up her competitiveness sometimes, as an example, like I would do that when we played the Not Another Tavern season that's coming out, but I knew that would get cut. So it's just kind of to build up the reaction or to build up the interaction, I guess is a better way to say it. So, and I find myself not really doing those in the live game, which I think is a con. I started trying to engage with the players a little bit more there, sort of reacting to the game out of character. So usually when I'm editing it, I tend to keep as much out of character stuff out as possible. And knowing that I'm not going to really edit this, I just don't do that. So it's sort of the bad habit I picked up where I don't play enough games that I'm not recording to like lean into that. But I think I got there on the third episode. I think that was the biggest one for me. The pros are it's live, so in the back of my head, there's always this line I'm trying to dance down where I want to be representing the table. I want to be showing whoever's listening what it's like to come to a table with a new player, some people who don't know each other, and experience the game. And when I edit too heavily, I feel that I am misrepresenting the experience. So my biggest pro of like the live is this is the live experience. This is exactly what it is at the table. Nothing else. This is it. This is what it is. It's very raw, very uncut, very exactly how it plays out. So that I actually like. So I feel that we're perfectly representing the live table here. And Brendan, we've talked some. We've had some conversations. You prepped us in the very beginning on what you wanted this game to be like, but otherwise, I don't know, you personally. I don't know the executive producer, and I feel like over this time I've gotten to know you, and we've become friends, and it's been a great experience, and that is exactly what I want to make sure I'm representing well with the show, and I feel like the live experience is the perfect place to do it. So that's my biggest pro. So, and there's pros and cons down the list. There's great stuff and not so great stuff. Little things that stick out. And again, it's time and effort. I wish I had more time to put into overlays, and like I want little light up boxes around everyone so you know that they're the one in the scene when the group splits and that kind of stuff. So, and we've talked about a couple of these old tricks and stuff. So some of the cons are I just haven't got to focus enough on the actual live show of it. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on now. It's 10 times what the production is when you're just doing a podcast, and I'm going to edit it. So, yep. Has it created more challenges than you did not think of going in, both in-game and post-production? I got like halfway there already rambling, but yeah. Not so much in-game. I think that the challenges in-game were just kind of my habits that I've fallen into because I'm used to editing this. So I think I've corrected that. So I don't think it's really the in-game isn't the challenge. It's the production is largely the challenges. And whenever I have to deal with like a technical issue, that's 5 minutes I can't devote to talking to everybody before the session starts and getting everybody hyped up and that kind of stuff. So post-production, it's not really a challenge. It's just more stuff. So, got to make sure I'm uploading to Twitch. Then I got to get a podcast version of it ready and that kind of stuff. So, yeah. And we got to, trim those, do a different intro, that kind of stuff. So it's still, yeah, and we're still figuring it out. So that's really the other big challenge. Is it's just going to take some time still to figure out. So, all right. Next question. Any thoughts on placing more adventures in pre-existing worlds in the future? Yeah. Danny lists a bunch of great story worlds. That's the dream for me. Realistically, that's what I'd love to be doing. But I also want to make sure we're getting the show to a point where like it's self-sufficient now, which is great. But the next hurdles involve being able to do this like full time and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot that goes into that, which allows you to do stuff like that. So really what I think we'll probably end up focusing on is driving some audience growth, and then probably taking on one of those. But there are so many that I would like to do It's yeah, it's an exhaustive list. But yes, I would love to run more adventures. That's what I like, exploring existing story worlds, especially with new players. Um, One of my favorite things to do with new players is to find out what story worlds, what fandoms they really enjoy, and then play a game in that. Like that's just the best player buy-in. We'll do exactly what you want to do. What's that thing? What's that comic book? What's that TV show? So I love doing that with new players. That's super, super engaging. And 9 times out of 10, I usually get to learn something about a setting I don't know about, which is fantastic. And I never like being the one at the table that knows the most about the setting. I like to make sure that that's a player. So yes is the shortest answer. I would love to do all of that, and I would think in 2019 there will definitely be some of it for sure. All right, and I think we have our last question. What platform do you use for the stream games? Oh, well, hopefully you found us now. Yes, it is Twitch. Twitch is what we use. I also upload it to YouTube. It's usually up a day or two after, barring anything crazy from happening. So the character creation in the first 3 episodes are up on YouTube, and I want to say everything up to the last 2 episodes is out on the podcast already. So we'll catch that up very shortly. But yeah. Otherwise, I think that's the end of the questions. Does anybody have a question in Twitch chat? I'm going to look at that for a minute. I see there's lots of Twitch chatty going on. Sorry, I'm really bad at engaging in both of these. I'm trying to remember to look at the camera and stuff and not at Twitch chat. But all right. Well, people are laughing, having a good time. I see lots of question marks, but it's a part of a conversation, so I don't think I'm going to jump into any of that. All right. So yeah, that's the end of the line for the Q&A Patreon or the Q&A Discord channel. So we will catch back up with that next time, and I think we'll just go back to this. All right. So I want to thank everyone for joining me for this GM chat and Patreon Q&A. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for letting me. Wait, who doesn't follow Eileen on Twitter? Okay, somebody doesn't follow Eileen on Twitter, and now people are yelling about it. So follow Eileen on Twitter. I want to say it's at New York Dreaming 25? Something like that. I think that's pretty close. She's definitely I retweet stuff from the Dice for Brains account as her, or from her. So you should be able to find it there. You should follow her so people don't have to yell at you. Uh-oh, Rossbot. They want Rossbot. Uh-oh. Oh yeah, Rossbot. I forget. I forgot. I have personal Twitter too. It's 2Rossbot, at 2, the number 2, and Rossbot, I think. Marcus asked where babies come from in the Twitch stream, which is odd because I'm pretty sure he has 3 children and I have none. So I don't know, Marcus. Maybe we do a call-in show next week, and you can tell everybody because I think you've got the inside scoop on that one. I remember some. Yeah, I went to public school in Florida. Don't ask me. You're gonna get some weird answers. All right. Yeah, that. Good. I'm glad everyone's enjoying that. All right, so thank you very much for this Q&A. I'm serious about the call-in stuff, so let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about bumping this up to a weekly thing. I wouldn't mind doing this every week. Maybe it's only a half an hour at that point, or maybe somebody just calls in and we have a chat for an hour. I think that would be fun. Anywho, I'm going to go get some sleep and everything because I've had a long week, and tomorrow's Friday. Tomorrow's Friday, yes. And I get to play a game on Saturday or Sunday? I'm already lost. I get a game in 2 days or something like that. I just got to get through this week. Yeah, thank you all so very, very much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I will talk to you very, very soon. Have a great night. Thanks for coming. Bye.